I wanted to read The Revenant because I saw the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, and I guess I wanted a fuller picture of Hugh Glass, the fur trapper mountain man who was attacked by a bear and sought revenge. And he was much more than that, as we learn in the book by Michael PUNKE. The story picks up in 1823, after the Rocky Mountain Fur Company was attacked by the Arikara, or Ree tribe. In the attack, 16 fur company men were killed and 12 were wounded. So much for trying to traverse the upper Missouri to get rich from beaver pelts. Back then, everybody wanted a beaver pelt. It was just the hot item. They made great hats. In the book, we discover that there was a counterattack. The whites counterattacked the Native Americans. But we didn't see this in the movie, but apparently poor leadership from Colonel Leavenworth was to blame. Because in the counterattack, the Arikara could have been totally dismantled. But Leavenworth dropped the ball, according to William Ashley, who was one of the heads of the Rocky Mountain Fur Company. I like the Indians, so I'm personally glad that Leavenworth did drop the ball. So Ashley, at the Rocky Mountain Fur Company, instructs Captain Henry to go on an alternative route where there aren't any Arikara warriors blocking the Missouri, and to lead his men up the Grand River where they can exchange their furs for cold hard cash and further supplies. But unfortunately, things go awry. One of the men in Captain Henry's party is Hugh Glass, and Glass has this really mysterious past. Some say he used to be a sailor. And not only that, some say he used to be a pirate. The author PUNKE goes into great length talking about this hidden pirate life that we didn't see in the movie. Supposedly, when he was younger, Hugh Glass was captured by the French pirate Jean Lafitte and given a choice to either join them or die. What kind of choice is that? But Glass hated being a pirate. No fun. And he escaped about a year later. Pillaging can be rough. And after living off poisonous snakes and dodging cannibal tribes in Texas, he was eventually captured by the Pawnee. The Pawnee were usually somewhat nice to the whites, but this wasn't a good time of year or something. Just too many things had gone wrong, okay? So the Pawnee sacrificed his friend, his traveling companion, brutally. But Glass managed to live because he had some cinnabar or vermilion on him, which he put on his face. And the tribal chief liked this, because that's not something that he saw every day. Glass must have been a god or something, he must have thought. So they decided not to burn him alive. So cut back to 1823. After becoming a pirate and a member of the Pawnee tribe, Glass joined the Rocky Mountain Fur Company, and here he is after all he's gone through, which takes him to one morning in the summer of 1823, searching for game for Captain Henry. Now, in those days, they didn't really bring food with them because the weight would slow them down. They might bring some tea, sugar, or salt, but nothing really heavy. Consequently, they had to go hunt every few days for deer or buffalo calf, and the sound of their rifles echoed for miles, possibly giving away their position. So here's Hugh Glass. He's searching for game. You saw this in the movie, right? When he runs into a couple 100-pound bear cubs. Now, this is cute until the mother shows up seconds later, and when you see something like this, the brain doesn't quite know how to process it. It's just terrifying. The enemy of the mountain men were grizzly bears, obviously, understandably, and he's looking one down. And where Hugh Glass was standing, there was nowhere to go. In some accounts, Glass tried to run up a tree. We don't see this in the book or the movie. And in those accounts, the bear grabbed him as he tried to run away. Now, in the book version, Hugh Glass stands his ground, and he doesn't run for the tree because there aren't any climbable trees around. And so he has to take one shot from his favorite rifle, an Onstadt, which carries a .53 caliber ball, and he aims for the heart. How heavy is a .53 caliber ball? Probably about half an ounce. In the book version, Hugh Glass's bullet kills the bear, and they find the bear lying on top of him. There are other accounts where Glass screamed for help and several men came to help kill the bear. Regardless, Glass somehow survived. Add to this, thanks to the work of Jim Bridger and Captain Henry, who at least sewed him up and put sap in his wounds. But Glass was unconscious and he couldn't talk because he was shredded up. His windpipe was cut. So they really couldn't take Glass with them, like with all the men, because it was too risky lugging the body along the perilous terrain. So the captain said, $70 goes to each man who stays back with Glass to give him a proper funeral. We're gonna need 2 guys. Guys, got it? Fitzgerald, a man with a scar running down his face, a man who killed a prostitute, a man with a gambling addiction who was running from the law, was the first to speak up. "I'll take care of him. I'll take that $90. I bet you will. To even the playing field, the captain also left Jim Bridger, who seemed to have a moral backbone, but Jim was just a kid. How was he supposed to fend off the vile machinations of a Fitzgerald? So there are Fitzgerald and Bridger left out in the middle of Indian country, and Hugh Glass isn't dying. After much bickering, what do? They take his rifle and supplies and leave him there. In the movie, Fitzgerald stabbed Hugh Glass's son, who was a Pawnee, but that was just for the box office. That's box office gold is what that is. Anyway, the rest of the story is about Glass claiming retribution. But to get his retribution, he'll have to crawl on his hands and knees before eventually hobbling hundreds of miles to his freedom. In the book and in the movie, he was crawling through dense foliage like you might see in Glacier Park, but in reality, they were in like South Dakota, okay? And South Dakota has more of the hilly plains than you would find in Montana. Glass seemed to know that leaving him there was not the unforgivable act. It was saying that he was dead and taking his weapon so he wouldn't have a chance at all. That was the unforgivable act. But in the book, when he finally makes it back to civilization, he beats up Bridger and actually shoots Fitzgerald in the shoulder in a faux trial. It's never happened again. Retribution wasn't the big issue supposedly on Glass's mind, but who cares? It's interesting to read a take on how the events might have played out. The Revenant is a legend, which means it's hard to tell what is fact and what is fiction, and the story has just taken so many hands with so many different writers who perhaps had different intentions to sell newspapers and bring tourists. With this said, I wonder, was the young man really even Jim Bridger? Part of me doesn't like that Jim Bridger would leave behind Glass, because Bridger's a legend in these parts, someone to look up to. So take heed, if you share my concern, this is a little contentious. And the whole Glass legend is riddled with inconsistencies. Again, there's disagreement among the historians. But the real question in this story may just be the morality of leaving a hurt man behind. Thank you for joining me today. If you had a good time listening to this animated book summary on The Revenant by Michael PUNKE, please subscribe, and I'll see you next Friday. It was great, as always.